It started as just another episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored, until it turned into one of the most jaw-dropping, history-making moments ever seen on live television. Across from Piers sat Karoline Leavitt, calm, flawless, her composure sharp enough to cut through glass. Her outfit was polished perfection, every detail deliberate. But it wasn't her look that froze the room. It was her eyes, steady, unflinching, locked on Morgan like a storm, waiting for the first strike. From the very first second, the tension was electric. You could feel it pulsing through the screen. Something major was about to erupt, and everyone watching knew this wasn't going to end politely. Piers leaned back in his chair, confidence dripping from his every move. That signature smirk curled on his face, the kind that says, "I've already won." He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and unleashed the first jab with the kind of British arrogance that has made him both famous and feared. "Miss Leavitt," he began, voice smooth but laced with condescension, "surely even you must admit that your recent political appearances have been less about serving the people and more about serving yourself. Isn't this all just one big branding exercise?" The silence that followed was deafening. You could practically hear hearts pounding in the control room. But Karoline didn't flinch, not even a blink. Instead, she slowly reached into a sleek leather folder by her side, every movement deliberate, calculated, the calm before a televised storm. Then, without a single word, she pulled out a crisp, white legal document. The studio lights reflected off its edges as she placed it right in front of him. The sound of paper hitting the table, cutting through the air like a blade. The camera zoomed in. The words were crystal clear. United States District Court, Southern District of New York. She looked up, voice steady, cold, and precise. "I'm here to serve you with something else entirely." The crowd, silent. Piers, frozen. The internet? About to explode. And then came the moment no one could have scripted. The gut punch that would echo across every screen, every platform, every headline for days to come. "You've just been served with a $20 million defamation lawsuit live on your own show." The words landed like a thunderclap. Then 5 long seconds of silence. Not the calm kind, the kind that hurts. The studio air turned thick, heavy, electric. You could almost hear the buzz of the camera struggling to catch every flicker of emotion crossing Piers Morgan's face. First came confusion, then disbelief, and finally, unmistakable panic. His trademark smirk vanished, replaced by a blank stare that would soon become one of the most replayed moments in television history. Within 48 hours, that frozen jawline had been seen by millions. Every platform, from YouTube to TikTok, was flooded with the clip. The internet didn't just react, it erupted. For years, Piers Morgan had built his empire on confrontation. From his tabloid days to his judging seat on America's Got Talent, he was the king of chaos, the man who thrived on provocation. His show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, wasn't just a talk show. It was his battlefield. And his favorite targets? Rising conservative voices, especially Karoline Leavitt. His interviews were like traps, sharp, fast, designed to corner his guests and expose their flaws. But this time, for the first time, the trap snapped shut on him. Because for 6 relentless months, Morgan had gone after Karoline with laser focus. Every segment, every headline, every clip, mocking her, calling her a fraud, twisting her words to fit his narrative. But then he went one step too far. Karoline, A disciplined woman, grounded, and yes, a trained attorney, knew the rules of engagement. She knew exactly where the line between fair criticism and outright defamation lay. And Morgan? He had just bulldozed right over it. 3 weeks earlier, he aired a segment titled "The Karoline Leavitt Problem." In it, he accused her of falsifying parts of her academic record, hinted she was under ethics investigation, and even implied she had hidden financial conflicts. Each accusation bold, each claim false. And Karoline, she had proof. So when she sat down across from him, she wasn't just there for an interview. She was there for justice, and she came armed. As the cameras rolled, Morgan launched in with his usual bite. "Ms. Leavitt," he sneered, "your recent political appearances have been described as theatrical grandstanding." Karoline didn't flinch. Her tone was calm, her words measured. "Piers," she said, "when you stand up to power, some will always call it performance." Karoline didn't blink. "But that's why I was sent to the Capitol, to speak truth and hold people accountable." Morgan pressed harder, leaning in like he smelled blood. "Surely some of your tactics are questionable. Your confrontation with Justice Alloway, for example." Karoline didn't flinch. "Legal scholars praised that exchange. My preparation was airtight. You might not like my delivery, but the facts were solid." His jaw tightened. He pivoted. "You're 34, barely 2 years into politics, yet you talk like a seasoned policy veteran. Isn't that presumptuous?" Karoline leaned forward, calm but firm, voice steady as a gavel. "My record speaks for itself. I'm a licensed attorney in civil rights law, graduated from Harvard, earned my JD at NYU, and have over a decade of legal practice, including federal cases. And you, Piers, what legal training do you bring to this conversation?" Morgan stiffened. "I'm a journalist, Miss Leavitt. I ask the questions." Karoline allowed herself the faintest smile. "Just clarifying who's really doing the interrogating here." The tension thickened, sharp enough to cut. Papers rustled. Cameras tightened their focus. Morgan flipped open a folder, hunting for the next strike. "Questions have been raised about your financial disclosures, your ties to lobbyists, and transparency issues." Karoline's tone cooled, steel under glass. "Go ahead. Be specific, because I have nothing to hide." He leaned in, voice low, as if the walls might listen. "Reports say your academic records are under review, that you're facing an ethics inquiry, and that you failed to disclose financial conflicts." The studio went silent, the kind of silence that turned seconds into hours. These were heavy accusations, and every one of them was false. Karoline's cadence shifted into razor-sharp courtroom mode, slow, precise, undeniable. "Piers, you need to be very careful now." She held his gaze, letting the warning land. The desk, the lights, the whole set seemed to tilt toward her. A beat passed, another. The control room didn't breathe. Karoline continued, each word measured like a filing stamp. "You just repeated claims that were debunked. I have the documentation, the dates, and the sign-offs. If you want to put it on the record, we can." Morgan's fingers tapped the folder, searching for something that wasn't there. "Transparency," she added, crisp as a verdict. "Mine is public. Yours, let's say it this way, looks selective." A murmur rippled off camera. Producers shifted. A graphic package sat queued, never aired. Morgan tried to recover his rhythm. "Viewers deserve answers." "They do," she said, not blinking. "Which is why I brought them." Another pulse of silence. Then the clock above the lens clicked, loud, unforgiving. Karoline slid a second sheet forward, the paper edge whispering across the desk. In case there's confusion, she said, this outlines every disclosure, every clearance, and every certification you just implied didn't exist. Morgan looked down, then up, then down again. The trap he set had turned into a mirror. Do you want to read the footnotes? She asked softly. Or should I? A hush. The pages spoke for themselves, and the atmosphere, thick with heat and light, waited for his next move. Are you stating on air? Karoline began slowly, each word landing like a gavel strike. That my degree is under review? That I'm under investigation? And that I have hidden financial ties? The question sliced through the air. For a split second, even the cameras seemed to hesitate. Sensing an opening, or maybe mistaking danger for opportunity, Piers leaned forward, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. He could almost smell blood. These are concerns raised by credible sources, he declared. The American people deserve the truth. Karoline's response came cold and controlled, the kind of composure that makes an opponent nervous. And these so-called credible sources, Piers, who exactly are they? Morgan waved his hand dismissively, as if brushing away a fly, trying to regain the upper hand. I'm not going to reveal my sources, he said, voice slick with arrogance, that trademark smirk returning just enough to provoke her. And that was his mistake. Karoline didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Every syllable came out precise, deliberate, edged with power. You've just made several specific false statements about me on live television. She leaned forward slightly, her tone tightening like a wire. My law degree has never been questioned. I am not under investigation, and I have no undisclosed financial conflicts. She paused, long enough for every word to settle, long enough for the silence to sting. Then she delivered the blow that changed everything. More importantly, she continued, eyes locked on his, I believe you knew these statements were false. The entire energy in the studio shifted. The control room froze. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Karoline leaned in closer, her tone low but lethal. 3 weeks ago, your own production team contacted my office. My staff sent back documented proof that every single one of those claims was baseless. And yet, here we are. For the first time, Piers faltered. His posture sagged, his eyes darting briefly toward the cameras before flicking back to her. Ms. Leavitt, I stand by my reporting, he muttered, his once confident tone now cracked with hesitation. Karoline's eyes sharpened. She tilted her head slightly, like a lawyer examining a witness who just confessed too much. Reporting? She repeated, voice laced with disbelief. Piers, you haven't reported anything. You've echoed lies without verifying a single fact. You've ignored evidence, and now you're standing here doubling down on garbage you know isn't true. The words hit him like a physical impact. The tension in the studio became unbearable. Lights buzzing, producers whispering, crew members frozen mid-step. Morgan's jaw twitched, his smirk gone, his usual bravado slipping through his fingers. And in that moment, it wasn't just an interview anymore. It was an exposure. Morgan tried to cut in. Now hold on just a minute. But Karoline's voice rose, firm, clear, and for the first time, truly commanding. She didn't yell. She didn't need to. Her tone sliced through the air like a blade. No, you hold on, Piers. The entire room froze. The authority in her voice silenced everything. Even the hum of the cameras seemed to fade. For months, she continued, you've made false statements about me. You've questioned my qualifications, my integrity, my honesty, all without a shred of factual basis. Then with slow, deliberate precision, Karoline reached into her briefcase again. The sound of the latch clicking open was deafening. Every eye in the studio followed her hand. "You want to talk about accountability?" she asked, her tone smooth but lethal. "Let's talk about yours." She pulled out another folder, thicker, heavier, and placed it squarely on the table between them. Morgan blinked, caught off guard, his voice cracking slightly. "Ms. Leavitt, I think you're being overly sensitive. This is legitimate journalism," he said, though his words lacked the conviction they once had. Karoline didn't miss a beat. She turned her gaze toward the camera, not at Piers, but at the millions of people watching. Her voice was calm, but it carried weight. "Legitimate journalism means facts," she said. "It means checking your sources. It means giving people a fair chance to respond. And when you get it wrong, it means correcting the record." Then she flipped open the folder. Inside, a stack of printed pages, neatly tabbed and highlighted. She spread them out across the table, like evidence in a courtroom. "I've got the receipts, Piers," she said, every word deliberate. "Transcripts, emails, every false statement you've made. Every single time your team was handed the truth and chose to ignore it." The producers behind the glass were in chaos now, whispering, gesturing wildly, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let it play out. But Karoline was unstoppable. "And more than that," she went on, "I have evidence showing you made these statements with actual malice." She looked directly at him, her voice cool and unshakable. "That means you either knew they were false or you simply didn't care." Morgan swallowed hard. The smirk was gone. The confidence drained. He tried for one last counter, his voice small, defensive. "Ms. Leavitt, She didn't let him finish. "I understand you're upset," Morgan began, his voice wobbling as he tried to regain some control, "but threatening legal action on air is not appropriate." Karoline's eyes locked onto his, cold, unwavering. "I'm not threatening anything, Piers." Then, with the calm precision of someone who'd planned every second, she reached into her briefcase one last time. Her movements were slow, deliberate, the kind of deliberate that makes an audience lean forward. "I'm taking it," she said softly, and placed a thick document squarely on the desk with a sharp, echoing tap. Her next words rang out, crisp and commanding. "Piers Morgan, and members of your staff, you are hereby served with a formal complaint filed in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York." The camera zoomed in right as she said it. The timing was cinematic. The transformation on Morgan's face was instant and unmistakable. The trademark smirk? Gone. The arrogance evaporated. In its place, pure, stunned disbelief. This can't be real," he stammered, eyes wide. "You can't just do this on live television." Karoline's tone was cool, almost eerily calm. "Oh, it's very real, Piers. And serving you on air is fitting, because this is where you committed the defamation." She flipped open the first page of the complaint and began reading, her voice steady, precise, and impossible to ignore. "The lawsuit alleges defamation per se, false light, invasion of privacy, and intentional interference with business relations." Each charge hit like a hammer. She didn't rush. She wanted every word to sink in. "You have made false statements about my professional qualifications," she continued, "my ethics, and my fitness for public service." Morgan's eyes darted toward the control booth, silently pleading for someone to intervene, to cut the feed, but the producers stood frozen, pale, and speechless behind the glass. Karoline kept going, unbothered. "We're seeking $20 million in damages," she said evenly, "plus punitive damages and a court-ordered injunction requiring you to issue public corrections and retractions." The number alone made him flinch. 20 million? He choked, his voice cracking. "That's absurd." Karoline didn't even blink. She leaned forward, voice low, calm, devastating. "Actually," she interrupted, "given your global platform and the damage you've caused," Karoline continued, her voice rising just enough to fill the studio, "it's more than fair. And the evidence," she tapped the file lightly, "is overwhelming." She flipped to another section of the folder, pages crisp beneath her fingers. "On October 12th, your producer emailed my office asking about my educational background. My staff responded immediately with my law degree, my bar admission, and my verified academic transcripts." Her tone was steady, matter of fact. Each date, each detail, hit like a time-stamped bullet. "Then, on October 20th, your team asked if I was under investigation. My chief of staff confirmed, on record, that no such investigation exists. And on November 1st, you inquired about my financial disclosures. We sent you direct links to my public filings." She paused, just long enough to let the weight of those words hang. "You ignored all of it." Morgan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, tugging at his sleeve. "We get a lot of emails," he mumbled, voice thin. Karoline snapped back instantly, sharp as glass. "That's not an excuse, Piers." Her tone cut straight through his defense. "This wasn't just reckless, it was intentional. You ignored the truth because it didn't fit the story you wanted to sell." He tried to steady himself. "Surely we can handle this off camera." "Oh no, Piers," Karoline interrupted, her tone cold, decisive. "You chose to attack my reputation in front of millions, so it's only right that you face the consequences the same way." Her gaze didn't waver, her posture didn't falter. She was no longer the guest. She was the one in control. Her tone shifted again, lower now, but powerful. It wasn't an interview anymore. It sounded like a closing argument before a jury. "This complaint also outlines the harm you've caused," she said, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "Since you began spreading these lies, I've received thousands of threatening messages." The air in the studio grew heavier. Even the camera operators had stopped moving. "I've had strangers show up near my home," she continued. "My staff has been harassed. My family dragged into headlines they had nothing to do with. I've had to increase my personal security just to do my job." She looked directly into the camera, her voice cracking just enough to show the weight behind the words. "And all of it, every ounce of this chaos, traces back to your false reporting, Piers." Morgan sat frozen. The studio lights seemed harsher now, exposing everything, every bead of sweat, every tremor in his voice, every trace of arrogance that had completely vanished. "Traces back to your show." Morgan's hands gripped the arms of his chair so tightly his knuckles whitened. The bravado gone. The smug grin gone. What replaced it was the unmistakable look of a man calculating the fallout, realizing the empire he'd built on controversy might just be crumbling live on air. "This is unprecedented," he muttered, his voice quieter now, almost unsure. "You can't just sue someone for doing journalism." Karoline didn't hesitate. "That's exactly the point, Piers." Her voice rose, not in anger, but in authority. Every word carried precision, power, and purpose. "You weren't doing journalism," she said. "You were manufacturing drama. You turned lies into headlines, and headlines into ratings. That's not investigative reporting. That's reckless, reputation-destroying slander. And there are laws against it. She turned a page in the document, the paper's crisp rustle echoing through the room. This lawsuit also seeks injunctive relief. If we win, and we will, you'll be legally required to issue public retractions, not just on this program, but on every platform where your lies have spread, your social media, your website, your syndication partners. She leaned in slightly, her eyes locked on his. And you will be barred, by court order, from making any further false statements about me. Morgan's jaw clenched, his voice coming out tight and defensive. This is clearly a publicity stunt. Karoline's tone shifted instantly, colder now, final, leaving no room for doubt. A publicity stunt, Piers? She repeated. I'm a public servant. I don't need stunts. Her gaze was unwavering, steady, and fierce. What I need is for people like you to finally understand that there are consequences when you cross the line. She turned slightly toward the camera, not for theatrics, but for truth. For too long, television hosts have hidden behind the word journalism while poisoning reputations with lies. You've made a game out of character assassination. Her voice rose just slightly, sharp and resonant, cutting through the air like the final words of a verdict. Well, guess what? She said, eyes narrowing. The game is over. The silence that followed was absolute, thick, unbroken, alive with tension. Then, she continued, her voice steady as ever. You want to critique my policies? Go ahead, Karoline said firmly. That's fair game. But the moment you lie about my credentials, my ethics, or my fitness to serve, that's not protected speech. That's defamation. She leaned forward, eyes locked onto his, her voice low and lethal. And now, she said, you're going to pay for it. The studio went dead silent. Even the faint hum of the lights seemed deafening. The control room froze. Every camera stayed fixed on the scene. No one dared breathe. No one dared move. Morgan didn't speak. He didn't even blink. The confidence that usually filled the room had vanished. Karoline straightened, her expression composed but sharp. Oh, and the process server is waiting right outside your studio, she added almost casually, as if discussing the weather. Then with a faint, cutting smile. But since we're live, service is now complete. She slid the final document across the desk with a slow, deliberate push. The paper stopped right in front of him. You've been officially served, Mr. Morgan. The weight of those words hit the air like a gavel striking wood. For a few heartbeats, no one spoke. The tension was thick enough to feel. Then, calm and methodical, Karoline began gathering her papers, stacking each one neatly, aligning the edges, her every movement measured and controlled. Your legal team, she said, her tone all business now, is going to want to review that complaint line by line. She stood up, smoothing her jacket. Discovery begins in 30 days. She took a step toward the exit, then paused. Slowly, she turned her head back toward him. The look in her eyes was calm, but her words landed with the precision of a blade. Next time you try to destroy someone's name, she said quietly, you might want to have your facts straight first. In this country, we have laws, and you, my friend, are about to learn them the hard way. With that, Karoline turned and walked off the set, posture unshaken, stride unhurried, power radiating with every step. The camera lingered on Piers Morgan. His face had gone pale, drawn, his usual composure shattered. For 10 long seconds, He just sat there, staring blankly at the stack of papers in front of him, as if willing them to disappear. Finally, he swallowed hard, blinked twice, and managed to mutter, "We'll be right back after the break." The screen cut to black, but the break didn't save him. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation flooded every corner of social media. Millions watched and re-watched the moment. Karoline Leavitt calmly dismantled Piers Morgan before serving him live on his own show. Hashtags erupted worldwide. Served live. Team Leavitt. Piers down. The footage spread faster than wildfire. Major outlets ran the story on loop. Morning talk shows dissected every frame. Late-night hosts replayed it with disbelief. A Harvard law professor posted, "This is how you handle defamation in the digital age. Preparation, precision, and public accountability." Even across the Atlantic, in Morgan's home turf, the press turned brutal. The Guardian called it a rare and devastating reversal. The Times of London declared, "Morgan's downfall is a case study in everything broken about modern media culture." The backlash was swift and expensive. Legal analysts tore apart Morgan's defense live on competing networks. Stock for his parent company plunged 14% in after-hours trading. Advertisers began quietly suspending contracts. PR teams went silent. Within days, Morgan's social media following plummeted by more than 500,000. Inside the network, chaos reigned. Emergency board meetings stretched late into the night. Executives argued behind closed doors, voices raised, tempers frayed over whether Morgan had become too toxic, too costly to keep on air. Because the lawsuit didn't just name him, it named the network. That meant, if they lost, they'd be jointly responsible for every dollar, the full $20 million, plus punitive damages that could push it even higher. The panic was real. Emails leaked. Investors pulled back. Legal teams scrambled to limit exposure. Meanwhile, public opinion flipped almost overnight. Karoline's office was flooded. Over 100,000 messages of support poured in from across the country. Law students, veterans, working parents, all writing, all thanking her for standing up and doing what few dared to do: hold a media giant accountable. For them, it wasn't about politics anymore. It was about principle, truth, integrity. 3 months later, as court proceedings began to loom, Morgan's legal team. 3 months later, Morgan's legal team made its move, filing a motion to dismiss the case. Their argument? His statements were merely opinions. But Karoline's attorneys hit back hard. They filed a blistering rebuttal, packed with documentation and something even more damning: audio recordings from inside Morgan's own production meetings. In one clip, Morgan's voice could be heard saying, "Yeah, that claim probably isn't true, but it'll make good TV." That single line detonated like a bomb in the courtroom. And it got worse. Court documents revealed that senior network executives had known before the segment aired that several of the accusations against Karoline were false. They'd aired them anyway, chasing ratings. That revelation cracked the case wide open. It didn't just destroy Morgan's defense, it exposed an entire system built on sensationalism over truth. Suddenly, it wasn't just one lawsuit. It was a chain reaction. Additional suits and government inquiries launched on both sides of the Atlantic, in the US and the UK. The fallout went global. 6 months after that infamous broadcast, a major poll showed 72% of respondents supported legal action against media figures who spread false information. The cultural shift was undeniable. Public figures were no longer shrugging off smear campaigns. They were fighting back, not with outrage, but with evidence, with lawyers, and with the law itself. By year's end, Piers Morgan Uncensored was gone. Cancelled. Morgan's credibility, the very currency of his career, shattered beyond repair. The platform he once used to corner, humiliate, and dominate guests had been stripped away entirely. Talk TV, facing mounting legal and public pressure, quietly settled the lawsuit for an undisclosed sum. They issued a full public apology and published written retractions across every platform, TV, print, and online. And Karoline? She didn't gloat. She didn't go on a victory tour or bask in the attention. She simply moved forward, calm, composed, and resolute. Her case became the gold standard for accountability in media. Law schools and journalism programs across the world began teaching it as a modern landmark in defamation and ethics. Professors called it a turning point. Students dissected every motion, every cross-examination, every strategy. It wasn't just a lawsuit anymore. It was a message, one that echoed far beyond the courtroom. Truth still matters. Every frame of that broadcast became iconic, studied, dissected, and replayed for years to come. In a media world where lies often travel faster than truth, Karoline Leavitt's case sent a clear, thunderous message across every newsroom and studio on the planet. Careless journalism has consequences. It reminded everyone watching